All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL DFS video, touching on the top showdown plays on DraftKings tonight for the game between the Dallas Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers. Now, as always, I like to start out with the ODDSJAM Sportsbook screen just because it gives us a good indication of how the game is supposed to go based off of how Vegas sees it going. So a 3.5 point spread, this game is expected to stay close. I like that. And then obviously a decently high scoring game at 45. So I like that. We look at the injury report here. There are kind of two significant injuries in terms of NFL DFS. Elijah Mitchell ruled out. That's going to mean Jordan Mason is going to be the RB2 like we saw last week. Now we could see a little bit more Kyle Juszczyk. Sure, that's probably going to happen. And we could just see a little bit more of Deebo Samuel out of the backfield as well. At the same time, we're just expecting a lot of Christian McCaffrey as well. But yes, the RB2 is most likely going to be Jordan Mason, who is perfectly capable of doing that. And then for the Dallas Cowboys, we're going to see that Peyton Hendershot is going to be out, which to me, I think that's going to open up some value for us as well. We look at the snap counts from last week. We're going to see they were down a little bit. They blew out the Patriots. But what are we going to see? Luke Schumacher got some work. And then Jake Ferguson actually saw his lowest snap share of the year thus far. I think we can see him getting about 75, maybe even 80% of the snaps with Peyton Hendershot, who had been getting about 50% of the snaps as well. Yes, we're going to see some two tight end sets. So yes, Luke Schumacher is going to be a good value, I would say. But at the same time, I do think we can expect Jake Ferguson to be someone we're looking at. So let's go ahead and get into this game. I am going to start out with the Dallas Cowboys. I personally think that we are getting some decent prices for the Cowboys. At the same time, we do see that they are going to be 3 of the 4 highest priced players on the slate, like the players that we want to be going out of our way to roster. The question is, can we do that, and is it worthwhile? I personally think it will be worthwhile. We know that Tony Pollard is going to be one of the players who's going to be highly productive in this offense. I do think we want to be targeting. People might shy away from him because the Niners matchup on paper is going to be a difficult one, and it is, don't get me wrong, but they have kind of benefited from not really having too difficult of matchups in terms of opposing running backs. Like James Conner did have a pretty good day rushing the football last week. The Cardinals just cannot keep it close enough for long enough. Then from there, I do really want to go out of my way to roster CeeDee Lamb. He has been pretty productive even without getting a high target share. Because the games haven't stayed close, they haven't needed him to. And so you look at the one game that was kind of close-ish, this game. And don't get me wrong, this game was somewhat close for a decent amount of the game. Like, those were his most targets. And I do expect that to happen again. Like, you look at the over and unders on PrizePicks, CeeDee Lamb set at 14.5 for his fantasy score, and I agree with that. And then Dak Prescott, his fantasy score on those PrizePicks sites is set at 15.5. And personally, that's one of my favorite over bets, just because once again, when we look at the game log, Dak Prescott really hasn't need to do much. Okay, this team is winning. They're running the football a lot. They don't need Dak to throw the football that much. Like, his most passing attempts is 40, and that was in that close game between the Cardinals and the Cowboys, and that wasn't even that close. The Cardinals were controlling that game for most of it. So I do think those 3 are going to be the obvious ones we want to go over way to roster. Now, we do have Jake Ferguson at a cheap price tag, and guys, the reason why I like him is look at those targets. 3 out of 4 games, he's had 7 targets. That's going to be appealing to me in a game that I think is going to be kind of a casual shootout. And so with Jake Ferguson, I would say we can play him, especially if we're not going to be playing one of these 3. Like, that's the approach I would go with. That kicker is firmly going to be in play. The Cowboys D is in play. Rico Dowdle has looked pretty impressive. My question is, would they default to him or would they default to Deuce Vaughn if they're playing from behind? I would say if they're playing with the lead, it would be Dowdle. He's the better kind of hard-nosed runner, whereas obviously Deuce Vaughn is a smaller guy. You don't expect him to grind out yard. And then just looking at value-wise, Luke Schumacher is going to be one of those plays that I don't want to say we're forced into playing him. Like, we have had so many elite value plays where it's just so obvious that we are just loading up on that play. It seems like every single slate we have had that. That is not him on this slate, don't get me wrong, because I worry about the upside there. Like, all those other plays we knew we're gonna be in good spots, right? Which, strangely enough, they've still been lower owned. It's like, how have people figured out the cheat code? Me. Just kidding. Don't want to be too cocky. But that's not exactly the play here. The reason why you'd be making this play is you'd be hoping for a catch. You'd hoping for 3 DraftKings points. And you can make a logical play, for a guy that's going to play about 50% of the snaps. We do know that the Dallas Cowboys will do stuff like this, where they'll design one play to him where no one thinks it's going to him, and he's going to get a touchdown. Like, that's in the realm of possibilities tonight. And so if we are trying to jam in the studs, like I think we should be, he has a play that does make some sense, but not a value play that's I consider a must play like we've had on a bunch of these slates. Now we switch up and get into the Niners. So the Niners are a little bit more difficult, I would say, as well. Just given the matchup with the Cowboys, it's going to be a tough one, but also given the fact that really any one of these players could go off. Let's say they get a DPI and it goes to the 1 yard line. We could see Brock Purdy get a 1 yard rushing touchdown. We don't love that. Christian McCaffrey has obviously been a stud. I do think we want to be trying to roster him as well. We are expecting him to get about 84% of the snaps as well. And so when we're looking at this is where like someone like Luke Schumacher is maybe someone we're looking at as a play. Brock Purdy, it feels like we just had to pass up on him tonight. Brandon Ayuk has been someone that has been extremely productive over his 3 games, 6, 6, and 8 targets. I personally would say he's probably going to be the one that has the best game, but also I do expect Deebo Samuel to get some design rushing attempts, probably a little bit more design plays as well. They just didn't need him last week. They didn't at all. It was weird. And so like we probably expect the game to start out with some looks to CMC, but also Deebo Samuel. And then as the game progresses, naturally the ball is just going to flow to Brandon Ayuk. Now, when we're considering the price tag difference, I probably would be rolling with Deebo. If we are playing someone like George Kittle, the only way I'm playing George Kittle is if it's going to be in the captain spot, because we know he can just go off for these huge games, and he would do that extremely low ownership because, well, it is a very risk-reward based play. For the most part, I would say we are probably fading him. It doesn't really make sense to end up on him. And then from there, who can we be looking at? Well, both kickers we're going to be looking at for the Cowboys and the Niners. I do kind of expect that to occur. Are we playing Ronnie Bell? Probably not, guys. Jordan Mason, could you play? Maybe. I mean, maybe he gets a lucky game flow rushing touchdown. CMC gets 80 yards on a drive, is tired. Jordan Mason comes in to close it out. Sure, that could happen. We just don't expect it. We did see a decent amount of Ray McCloud the last couple of games. They've been using him in kind of unique ways. Could he get a couple of points? Sure, we're not banking on that. Kyle Juszczyk probably going to be playing a little bit more today. It's just tough. Like, we could be looking at any one of those players. I just don't feel good about it. Like, if we're going with the value, it's going to be Schumacher. Okay, so we know that we probably need to pivot off of one of these players here. I'm going to go with Dak, unfortunately. So I'm going to put Schumacher in the value spot there. I'm going to go with Jake Ferguson. Then we have a decent amount of salary left over to be able to afford whichever player we want. If we want to toss in Brian Ayuk there, we can. Let's see if we can get someone like maybe Tony Pollard in there. I think that'll be a little bit lower owned than CMC. We'll try that. We get Deebo Samuel. I feel pretty good about that build. Okay, it works. Don't love that we're fading both the quarterbacks. At the same time, we are getting the 3 next best options and possibly the 4 next best options. Heck, 4 out of the 5 best options on the slate we're getting into our build. And guys, that's going to be all for this video. If you guys want access to an NFL DFS lineup optimizer for that Showdown slate per se, hit the link in the description below. It's available for just $10 a month. That's included in the 95 membership. You get access to the props tools as well there. So check that out. Let's have a good slate tonight. And as always, guys, let's keep cashing.